Welcome back to another episode of this short little tutorial series where I'm going to be demonstrating how to use the JSON and HTTP utility plugin. In this episode, I'm going to be showcasing how we are going to use functionality to load JSON files that already exist on the user's machine into Unreal Engine, and then we are able to read the data from those loaded JSON files in Unreal Engine. We're gonna cover all the nodes for getting data out of JSON files and some utility functions which allow us to check if fields exist and to remove fields from already existing JSON files. So without any more talking, let's get into the tutorial. I wanted to pop in here real quick and just let you know that this tutorial and all the tutorials which are going to follow this episode are based on this plugin right here, the JSON and HTTP utility plugin. A link to this plugin will be found in the description below. So if you would like to follow along or learn more about it, you can find the link in the description below. And now let's actually get into the tutorial. So back in the engine, as you guys can see, I am back in the template project for the third person template. As you can see, it's the basic template everyone gets as soon as you start the engine. And all of the logic which I'm going to show you today is going to be done in the third person character blueprint. So if you just open that up, and all the logic is going to stem off from begin play. So here is just the basic starting logic Unreal provides you so you can have a movable character. So we're going to leave this here off begin play. And then off of that, we're going to add on top our own custom logic. So again, as mentioned before in this episode, we're going to be showcasing how to load data into Unreal Engine. So the only requirement for this will be you already must have a JSON file present somewhere on your machine. So in my case, I have a JSON file already set in the project's directory. So if I can show you right here. So as you can see, we're in the project directory. As you can see, in the same file where all of my other project files are, there is a JSON file called JSON test data, and if I open it up, as you can see, it's a very large JSON data file with just lots of random data, and the data from here is actually Valorant character data. The way I got this was actually I used the built-in HTTP request node, and I sent a request to an unofficial Valorant API to request this data, and then this is the data it returned. So what I did is I just requested that data, saved it to a file, and now I'm gonna load it into Engine again. So before we close down this folder, all we need is just the name of the file and the extension. So select all of it and copy it. So I press Ctrl C. So just copy it and keep it in there as we're gonna need it in a second. So now heading back into the engine, we're gonna, first node which we are going to use is called load file from disk. So if I just do load file from disk, right, like this. What this node will do is actually attempt to load any text file from your machine into Unreal Engine. You must note that any file you are trying to load must be a text file. So it doesn't matter if it's .txt, .json, whatever, it has to be a text file. It cannot load anything else. So yeah, just remember, it must be text files. So with the node already created, drag away from file and type in make, and then you'll see a new structure which you can create, what's called file data. So just create that, and then you'll have to provide a file directory and a file name. So for the file directory, this is the path to the file you're trying to load. So the reason why I placed my JSON file in the project directory is because now all I can do is just type in get project directory, and this will return the path to my directory. So all I have to do is just connect this to this, and now the load file from disk will know the path to where my JSON file is stored. Now all I have to do is just provide the name of the actual file I want to load. So in this case, as I mentioned before, that's what you should have copied the name, because now all you have to do is just paste it, JSON test data, and just like that, I have loaded the file into Engine. And we might not know this yet, but if I was to test it by printing out this string like this, compiling, saving it, and actually starting the game. On the left hand side, you'll see a debug message appear with the whole JSON file, with all of the contents of the JSON file. So let's test it. There you go. As you can see, all of the content of that JSON file just appeared on my screen for a few seconds. So we know it works. Okay, so back in the blueprint, we can delete the print string for now. And now we have the raw string data, but we can't really do much with raw string data unless we want to manipulate directly strings, but that's not really helpful. So what now we can do is use another node called string to JSON object. And as it says on the tin, what it does is it takes the raw string data and attempts to convert it into a usable JSON object. But you have to remember, the caveat here is you have to provide a file which is formatted in a JSON style, or else it will fail to convert it into a JSON object. So the loaded file must be a JSON file for this node to convert it into a JSON object. Okay, so now we converted it into a JSON object. We can now manipulate the data within the loaded JSON file as we would any other JSON file in Engine. So for example, let me pull up the JSON file again. And as you can see in the JSON file, we are actually provided with two pieces of data, two fields of data, which is a status, which is a number field, and an array field of type data. And the array field of type data contains all of the actual data within it as an array. And then the status is just a single number field. This is just how the JSON file is provided when you request it using a HTTP request from the unofficial Valorant API. So just to test, let's try to pull the status field. So assuming everything is correct, if I try to pull the status field, I should be returned with the value 200 in Unreal Engine. So back in Engine, now as you can see, I've loaded the file and converted it into JSON object. So now I can pull out from here and try and use the node try get number field. And now it will ask me for a field name. So you have to always make sure you provide the correct field name as it's stated in the JSON file right here. So I'm looking for status. So I'll copy it just to be sure. I'll do Control C. And then back in the field name, just paste it. And now if I try to do a print string from here and connect number data into the print string like this and compile and save. Now when I start the game, on the top left of the viewport, we should see a debug which says 200. So let's test it. There it is, right there, 200. Okay, so now back in the blueprint graph. So we know it loaded correctly and we debugged the value. We could also do a success check here, so using a branch. So then if the print string, if something went wrong, we would go from false. But if everything was correct, we'll always come out from true. But personally, I rather testing stuff in Engine rather than just running branch checks. So I prefer to see it actually live in action when I start the game. So now we know that the status code works and we're able to pull the number data out from it. What about if we try to pull array data from our JSON file? So we know that in our JSON file, we have an array called data. So let's try to pull the array out of the JSON file. So pulling from JSON object, let go and type in try get array field, just like this. And then field name will be the field name provided in the JSON file. So again, it'll be data. So I'll copy it, Control C, back in Engine, I'll paste it. And now you can see we have an out JSON array. So it provided us with an array. So this array is providing us with every single entry given in this data array right here in the JSON file. So if I open this array up, and as you can see, all of these are specific objects. Even though they don't have a name, all of these are objects which contain specific data about one individual character in Valorant. So when you're in Unreal Engine and you receive this out JSON array, you are actually referencing every single one of these individual objects, which contains even more data within itself. How would we go about pulling specific data out of each array field? So now that we have loaded the array into Engine and we can access each individual entry in the array, let's try to pull the name of each Valorant character and print it onto the screen. So what we're going to do here is for each loop, which will loop over this whole array, and we're going to try to retrieve a new data field called display name. So this field entry here, field name, is called display name, which will pull the name of the Valorant character, which in this case Gecko. And then if we collapse this object field and open up the next object field, this one is called fade. And if we do that again, deadlock. And if we move down a little bit, Sova. So it should retrieve every single name of each character in Valorant. So pulling for each loop, let's do a new node called try get string field, like that. And then provide the field name of display name. And then let's just connect that with print string. And change the display duration to maybe like 10 seconds. And then let's test it out. So now in theory, we should be able to see every single Valorant character's name as a debug message. Right there, Jet, Omen, Reyna, Sage, Yoru, Neon, ISO, Brimstone, etc, etc. As you can see, it worked. It went through the whole JSON file and pulled each display name from each object within an array and provided it to me as a print string. Okay, so this was quite a simple example of just pulling a string field out of an array of data and printing it on the screen. But what if a JSON file is more complicated and has nested arrays within an already existing array? So as you can see, the data field is an array, and within this object we have abilities, which actually is another array field, as you can see. And when within this array field we have every single ability for this individual character. So how would we access this field? Well, very simple. Instead of using try get string, again we would just do try get array field like this, and then just provide it with the array field name, which is called abilities. And then once again just run a for each loop to pull the data out of this array field in the JSON file. So let's now try to get the display name of each ability. So it'll be a string again, so try get string field, and then the field name, and then print string. Print it to screen, and just make the duration longer. And now we will print every single ability for every single character in Valorant. Let's test it out. As you can see, all of the skills which can be found for each champion in Valorant are right here as a debug message. So up to this point, we have used the try get array field, try get string field, and try get number field. We also have a bool field and an object field. They work exactly the same as the ones we've just used, so I'm not going to showcase how these work, but they follow the same principle. You just provide a field name, and then the data associated with that field name will be given back to you. The only difference is try get all object field names. How this will work is it will take the provided JSON file you input into it and retrieve every single field name, which you can see here, to you in an array. So then you can loop through each entry in that array and retrieve every single field name. This is useful if, for example, you want to automate something where you don't want to have to go through the JSON file and look for a specific name. So you can just use this to retrieve all the field names and then find the field name you're looking for that way. I'm not going to showcase how this node works right now because it's very self-explanatory, but in the future, if people want me to do a video about it, I will do a separate video showcasing how this node works. But for now, that's going to be everything for all of the try get nodes, which allow you to get data out of JSON files. Now, the last thing I want to demonstrate is actually how to remove JSON fields from a JSON file. So what we can do is, let's take the already loaded in JSON file we have with all of the Valorant characters. And let's say we want to remove a field. Let's say we want to remove the field character tags and the background gradient colors. How would we go about doing that? So we already have a for each loop here, which loops over every single object in the JSON file. But it's connected to remove JSON field. And then provided with a field name we want to remove. So in this case, we want to remove background gradient colors. Let's copy the remove JSON field again. Connect it to the new JSON object. And then also let's remove character tags like that. That's everything we have to do. These two nodes now will remove those fields from each object found in the array. If an object doesn't exist, this will fail and just continue. What I recommend is using the success node out here, so you will know if it successfully removed a field or not. But just for the showcase, I don't have to, because I know 100% that it will remove these two fields. So I'm gonna let it loop over the whole array, removing these fields. And once it completes, right here, I'm gonna take the loaded file again, and I'm gonna save it back to disk. So what I'm gonna do is do toString like this, and then save file to disk, make a new file data, provided with project directory, and give it a new name. So the name is going to be new JSON data.json. So what I'm doing here is converting the already existing JSON file to string and saving it to disk. I've covered how to do this in the first tutorial, so if you're not sure how to do this, please go watch the first tutorial and you'll know. So now if I head back into the game and start it like this, and see nothing happened. But now if I close the game, go to my project files. In the project files, you'll find a new JSON file called new JSON data. If I open this up, as you can see, we no longer have the two JSON fields we had before, which were character tags and background grading colors. For every single object in this JSON file, they're all have been removed. So that's going to be about everything for this episode, showcasing how to load JSON files into Unreal Engine and how to retrieve data from loaded files. In the next episode, I'm going to cover how to send HTTP requests to different APIs and how to read the data received from an API request. Till then, see ya.